All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy, the SGG of this awfully, terribly, no good named podcast series. And the QA, of course, stands for question and answers. We like to make this an interactive morning show. We can sort out our feelings about the top tech news stories. Why I like to hold my show on a Monday is it gives us the week and the weekend. Maybe there's also some breaking news early in the week, but just gives us a little time to sort out our feelings, and then we can talk about this stuff and revisit some of the top tech stories. You know, a big headline pops out, we still want to follow up on what's going on, and I'm seeing some phenomenal chatter already in the live chat. Matt Tyler, Vazikos, LFA Reviews, Technically T, Baseball Super. Good to meet you too, Baseball Super. Aditya Anil, Goran Petrovic. And yes, I did get the poster put up. I need to get a better frame for it. This is just this was $9 at Target. And it's really bad. So I'm looking for something that's going to frame it a little bit better. But I needed to get it mounted just for this morning show. I am, of course, talking about the housewarming gift that friend of the show, Andrew Wallace at Fat Produce, sent over for Gadget Lab 3.0. This is the second broadcast in Gadget Lab 3.0. I guess it's the third if you count the state of the Patreon, which we'll get to in housekeeping. But he sent over a blueprint, a schematic, the patent filing for the toy of the USS Excelsior from 1987. And again, just furthering our bromance, our Star Trek flavored bromance between Andrew and I. My wife doesn't know what my favorite Starfleet starship is, but Andrew does know what my favorite Starfleet starship is. So I had to get it up on the wall. I freaking love it. So, I'm seeing Mr. Pulp Fiction, Mbuk W. Thankfully, I have a Chromecast Ultra and an HDMI port above. Greetings from Germany to California from Mr. Pulp Fiction. Vazikos 8, it's in the place the cracked sensor used to be. Okay, I just need to explain that for just a second. Vazikos 8 taking me to the mat. That was ruthless and brutal, and I love it. Okay, when I was at Pocket Now, I used to shoot on a Samsung mirrorless camera. While we were in the middle of a trip, the filter there's like a filter that cleans the sensor, and that cracked. And I really couldn't afford multiple cameras at the time. So to host the podcast, I was still I used that Samsung for almost 2 years. Because I would get a new camera and then something would happen to an old camera. I'm shooting this on a Panasonic right now, and that had to be sent in for some repair work. It's just like every time one thing kind of gets fixed in the Gadget Lab, it's like whack-a-mole, something else pops up. But for almost 2 years, there was a crack in that sensor, and I would use the shallowest depth of field that I could, and then hide the crack in like parts of the bookcase. You know, the lighting in the bookcase used to be really Christmas tree lighting, and I would try and like angle the crack of the shadow through that. So thank you for bringing that back, Vazikos. I'll never live down the camera with the cracked sensor. Baseball Super, well played, Andrew. Gary the Fireman, best gift ever. Goran Petrovic, Fat Produce is such a sweet person. He is good people. We are always happy to have Andrew on Team SGG. He might be joining later. He usually has early meetings because he's got a job and he has to pay his bills and stuff instead of watching my podcast. Mr. Pulp Fiction, does Juan watch Star Trek Picard? I was going to try and catch up this weekend, but the time spent cleaning up the Gadget Lab a little bit, trying to get a few more boxes unpacked, it just didn't happen. And I really want to sit down and give it a fair shot. I don't just want it on in the background. I want to pay attention to it, especially for some of the the reviews that are coming out that seem somewhat disappointed in the series. I don't want this. I think I let Star Trek Discovery become background fodder, and then I really wasn't invested in that show, and I really wasn't giving it a fair shot. So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try with Picard, but I mean, I don't know when I'll actually get to it. I'm just trying to avoid major spoilers like the plague. And Matt Tyler, I see SGGQA on the bookshelf. I'm going to try and use that. There was always the idea of using this little light board, this little light sign in more of my reviews. I want to bring it back. It's a cute little sign. Okay. It's 9:06. Oh, LFA is saying Picard is so good. And I again, LFA, if also just the consistent weekly shout out. If you're not following LFA, then you hate your ears. I don't know why you hate your ears, but you should be following LFA reviews. You should like your ears and follow LFA. You see how those go together like peanut butter and jelly. So give them a follow. But I'd absolutely trust Jeff's recommendation on that. And Mr. Pulp Fiction, do you like the Orville? I love the Orville. I love that the Orville started out being pitched as this satire on Star Trek, and then just genuinely became its own serialized science fiction adventure story. Still a little on the goofy end, obviously, it's Seth MacFarlane, but where they're taking some of their storylines more seriously and putting the crew into situations where they actually have to rise to the occasion feels a lot like classic original series Star Trek, which I'm just glad there's an option for that somewhere. I'm hoping this third season comes out all right with their shift. I mean, where they're going to be going to Hulu? I can't remember, but they're going to go to a streaming service for this next series. All right, I'm getting some over-unders on housekeeping. Gary the Fireman is saying 8 minutes. Matt Tyler joining him on 8 minutes. So let me get this queued up now because we do have a little housekeeping. I actually got a couple things out last week. Let me get this here. Okay, I'm going to go into screen share. The biggie, this was a huge video. Blue Malicious is saying 12 minutes, a DTNL is saying 7. Okay. Number 1 with the bullet, LG V60 first look, the budget-friendly premium pro phone ? Could I have made that title any more ridiculous? I don't think so. So I'm very proud of this video. I'm not going to talk about my experiences using the LG V60, getting a morning to play with it. This is very limited access, very limited exposure. The reason why I'm really proud of this video is this happened on the day of our move to this new condo. We were putting boxes on a truck. My computer had all been torn down. My cameras were being packed up and loaded up so that they could be transported over here. And this was literally the test. I shot, recorded the audio on Wireless Labs, edited, rendered, and uploaded a 4K 60 frame per second first look video of the V60 on my LG V50. Everything that I love to talk about. Can we push phone use further? Can we displace laptop use? Can we use our phones and really get our money's worth? Everything was put to the test in this first look video. And this is one of the best phone videos I've ever put together. I've done a ton of vloggy. It's okay if it's kind of shaky or transitions don't line up exactly the way that I'd want them to. I really wanted this video to look as close to my normal punchy editorial style, and I think we got there. The number of comments I saw from people who made it all the way to the end and saw the little banner that I put that, oh, by the way, this was all shot and edited on a V50, and that no one could really tell the difference or that there was anything that made this video feel lesser than, right there. So that's what I'm really excited about with the V60. I'm really excited to go hands-on with the V60. It's a beast of a phone, and I think it's going to be a fun, controversial Invisalign is messing me up. A controversial phone to review, but for me, it was a proud of me moment getting that all shot and edited and rendered on a phone. Baseball Super, good title. Another initiative, something that I talked about with my patrons on the State of the Patreon. I'm really going to try and get back into doing a few more written reviews. They're not everything really feels deserving of a full-on video, but there's still accessories and stuff that I want to cover. So the UAG Monarch case for the Pixel 4 XL, when your fabric case gets gross. Just a couple photos, a rundown on what makes this case unique, how much I've enjoyed it. And then, of course, I can't make it through any kind of a review or any type of a topic like this without soapboxing just a little bit. We all know that the Pixel 4 is not going to be one of the premier top-selling phones. From its initial leaks and from its early release, this phone was destined to be a low unit seller. Even against Google's own offerings with the Pixel 3a. We kind of knew that. And especially for some of the stories we're going to be talking about, how consumers are getting a little exhausted by the ultra premium tier of smartphones. But that's why I really wanted to send a shout out to UAG. When phones aren't top sellers, I think accessory manufacturers will often overlook them. And the work that UAG did on a nice rugged bumper case here, I thought was worthy of mention. All of the little details, all of the fit and finish, how the case flexes on the sides to enable things like the Google Assistant. UAG put a lot of consideration into this case. And so if you're out there and you're rocking a Pixel 4 and your fabric case is getting kind of gross. Hold on, do I have mine over here? Bang, smash, crash. If your fabric case is getting kind of gross like mine is, you can see that big coffee ring. And then this is the corner that I dropped it into wet grass when I was shooting some flower macros. I've tried cleaning it. It kind of cleans. But if you're looking for a much more durable, it's kind of a chunky guy, but if you want something that's going to make your Pixel 4 more rugged, then I would highly recommend trying to support those manufacturers that are doing a good job of putting out accessories for less popular phones. Competition is the name of the game, and those companies deserve your consideration. From Blue Malicious, I don't think people appreciate how much a solid, reliable, well-made case can transform the use of your phone. True story. Okay, on SomeGadgetGuy.com, the last big article, the last big post, I was kind of surprised that this got picked up like it did, but airing some dirty laundry should always manage, some controversy traffic. Samsung Galaxy S20, what is a reviewer's responsibility? I've been asked to weigh in on the controversy surrounding the Galaxy S20. Excuse me, how Samsung put out an extremely expensive phone or series of phones, all the way up to the Galaxy S20 Ultra, which is a $1,400 device, seeded it out to a handful of select channels. And then those channels really started struggling with some of the early software gremlins on the phone. How it was reported to them, this was a phone that was really close to a retail release, that Samsung felt confident that this was the experience that consumers would probably have early for that first launch use. I'm not going to repeat the editorial here because it's a long and kind of messy editorial. My feelings on this are really, really messy. And I mentioned that both on Twitter and in this editorial. But there's a game that's being played which works against smaller reviewers, even medium-sized reviewers. And it puts our favorite larger reviewers under this unreasonable crunch to try and get their videos out, to try and have the best chance at monetization, to try and appease Samsung PR, which can be very punitive in how it deals with reviewers and with content creators. When it comes to companies like Samsung and Apple, we're less and less, in my opinion, we're less and less looking at actual consumer enthusiasm for new releases, and we're looking at an aggressively geared hype machine. And I think that's causing some of this burnout at the upper end of the market. And how we're supposed to deal with that, I don't know. This is why I like to try and engage in a bit more conversation. What I was really heartened were the number of people that in my industry who also were starting to feel likewise, that Samsung's ability to manipulate their own media coverage was working against our ability to produce fair content. And it reads like sour grapes. I've already gotten a comment saying, "You just sound jealous." They didn't actually comment on any of my criticisms of Samsung. It was just the tone. So again, the facts weren't the problem. Your tone, you sound jealous. And you're like, well, I can't help that. If we don't criticize Samsung as the market leader, then we're stuck with a company that can exercise inordinate leverage against the smartphone industry. So if you'd like to kind of weigh in, I would actually appreciate more comments on this post, because I leave this fairly open-ended. I don't know what the solution to this issue is. As a content creator, I feel my work needs to be monetized, or I can't do it. You know, like I declare this room on my taxes. This room is not functional as a guest room. This room is not contributing to my family unless I can make money off of this room. And let me tell you, 3-bedroom condos in Southern California are not cheap. So I need to be able to monetize this space. And that means my time and effort and work need to contribute to paying bills and putting food on the table. So if we can't address this problem, you know, the first step in fixing a problem is just admitting that we have one. If we can't address this problem, then the content that we enjoy as tech enthusiasts is going to be increasingly manipulated by 2 or 3 mega billion-dollar, potentially trillion-dollar companies. And when the general audience or general consumers recognize that there's a problem, it's going to be way too late for us to really fix it. So this was my first step at airing some dirty laundry so that we can have this conversation. And like I said, the number of other smaller and medium-sized reviewers, Shannon Morse and Tank Girl, Miriam, the other people that joined that conversation, I'm just exceedingly grateful that they also spoke up, because we're also lone wolves. Samsung benefits from the fact that, I mean, we kind of talk to each other and we're friends with each other. My work friends are all over the world making their own YouTube videos, but we don't, it's bad taste. It's bad form to really dig into granular metrics, into granular SEO details, and the exacting nature of our PR relationships. We just don't talk about that. And that works to the benefit of Samsung and Apple, you know? When one of those companies is engaging in business practices which general consumers would probably find somewhat objectionable, we're not communicating with each other that that's the experience we're sharing. We're starting to now. And it's not like we're going to unionize tomorrow, but better communication between various content creators is only going to lead to a healthier market for tech discussion. From Baseball Super, it was also nice to see that about the same time you wrote that article, GSM Arena's review of the Ultra was decently critical overall. And we're going to get to that, because the second half of this podcast, we're going to be talking a little bit about disruptions in the market. Galaxy S20 sales are slumping. And then also some other fears we've got coming up So it's it's a complicated issue. Mr. Pulp Fiction. It's a specs race. 100 times zoom, 108 megapixel camera. LFA reviews. I love Shannon. Snubs. She's the best. I got to party with Shannon at a Glitch Mob concert, and that girl is fearless. So like there was this whole barricade where you weren't really supposed to go. Like it was separating Glitch Mob from like just the general audience, and she just hopped that fence, and she had a Pixel 3 just snapping night sight images until security kind of like picked her up and walked her away from the stage. And Glitch Mob was so loud, and she was right in front of those speakers. She's a maniac. I freaking love her commentary. All right. Let me get this out of the way here. And let me get this back here. Oh, one other little bit of housekeeping, just because I know Patreon's notifications and content support are kind of weak. If you're on the Patreon, we did the first State of the Patreon live stream on Saturday. So you can kind of get a sense of where we're going to be taking the channel. I've got some early data on some of the changes we've made to distribution. Some videos going directly to YouTube Public, some videos going unlisted, and then also a handful of videos. And I'm getting some good data early on videos that are going to Twitch. I'm using Twitch as a video streaming backup to YouTube because I don't trust Google. Again, for the number of times that my content has been demonetized. So I'm starting to get some general trends, and this is something we're going to be following up on in our shareholders meetings monthly. I'm going to try and get back to doing proper monthly shareholders meetings. So that also went live. Team SGG State of the Patreon, February 29th, 2020. That video you can catch if you're on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. It's Thexy Pat. I think reviewers should have to be more open and quantify the value of their free stuff, compensation, or perks, if any, when relating it to the public in a video or review. And again, the disclosure on that is becoming more granular. I mean, your feelings are totally accurate in that point. The FTC is starting to watch this stuff. And if you're a home content creator, how you declare this stuff on your taxes, how you declare this stuff for your audience is starting to matter. We're all starting to build this stuff in. It's an evolving challenge. I mean, we're talking about moving the goalposts pretty significantly. I'm putting in disclosure, most of my videos have affiliate links all over them. So I'm trying to make sure I'm notifying people that when you click on a link on my video, it's likely going to take you to an affiliate store. And then also, we have an issue with how we use and return review devices. I can't afford to buy every single phone that I review. I'm borrowing as many of them as I can. And thankfully, I have a few PR agencies that will send me short-term loaners so that I can provide coverage too. But that still also has to be factored and managed. And I don't know that we've got a good legal standard, for how we report and manage those. It's kind of just up to each content creator how vocal they are about where and how they got the phone if it's not something that they've purchased. So again, it's an evolving conversation, and hopefully we'll, over the next couple of years, get some good guidelines, some actual guidance on what we should be doing, and also just to better protect ourselves so our channel isn't in an actionable state or under the scrutiny of some kind of regulatory watchdog. So, housekeeping. Way longer than 8 minutes. Matt Tyler, you have to do what you have to do to create the content you want to create while also providing for your family. YouTube and others should not decide how to run you. And we agree with that sentiment, but we're also beholden to whatever platforms that we can use to distribute our content. I'm looking also that maybe there might be a play for using archive.org as a video hosting backup, or maybe even looking at what it might cost to do lower quality videos and have my website hosting be sort of a backup solution to that too. It's tricky stuff. It really is. The Razor, a lot of places have tried. So the Razor asks, anybody know of a phone trial service for common folk? I'd love to try a device for a few days before forking over hundreds of dollars. there have been a few attempts at like boutique services, like rent something. They've almost always been predatory or scammy, kind of like, what was it? Rent-A-Center. You could rent your TV and eventually own it, but it would cost you way more than if you just purchased that TV. Really, I think your safest bet is just making sure you're doing business with companies that have reputable return policies. 2 weeks is usually not enough to really get a feel for if you're gonna like that phone, but it's the best. I think that's the safest that I could ever recommend is try to buy unlocked and really pay attention to what your return window looks like. So, that was all the housekeeping. All of the stories that we're talking about this week, all of the housekeeping is going to be on SomeGadgetGuy.com and the show notes for this episode. So, I think we should jump into some actual, real news and tech commentary. We've got a little bit of tech politics we need to knock out, and then the second half of the show, let's talk about what it means to be a market leader, Galaxy S20, what responsibilities reviewers have to follow up on those gadgets, and then also just what consumers' expectations are, because I think they've changed significantly over the last 2 years, and I don't think the top players have really pivoted properly to supporting consumers in the way that they want to be supported. So, Gary the Fireman, I got hosed on housekeeping. It's a good thing we don't actually put money on housekeeping. And from Haiki, I am so sorry I mispronounced your name. I am bad at names. Some gadget guy, any idea when you're getting a V60 for review? I don't have any timetable on when actual review units are going out. LG is always, whenever they announce a new phone, it's like the phone is ready long before all of the regional distribution contracts are in place. So they've always been super cagey. From the V20 on, they'll announce a phone and then it could take another month before we get proper pricing and distribution. At the LG presser for the V60, at the press event that I was at in Southern California, everything was super loose. They're hoping for end of March, and they're hoping it'll cost less than a base model Galaxy S20. And that's the same info we've all been given. If anyone has any other greater insight, it's not me. Get this out of the way here. Okay, let's get quick news. If there's FCC news to talk about, we've got to talk about it. Tech and politics are critical discussions for those of us who care about the future of our telecommunications network. And this one's coming by way of the New York Times. Let me click in here. A story we're following up on. We covered this a couple months back when it was breaking news. FCC to fine cell phone carriers for selling customers' location data. Written up by Jennifer Valentino DeVry. Let me get this down here. From the article, the Federal Communications Commission is set to propose about $200 million in fines against 4 major cell phone carriers for selling customers real-time location data, according to 3 people briefed on the discussions. The penalties would be some of the largest the agency has imposed in decades and represent the first action it has taken on the issue, though privacy advocates and critics in Congress say even that response is inadequate. The amount is not final, and the companies, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon, will have the opportunity to respond and argue against the fines. So, each one of those companies, even Sprint, multi-billion-dollar corporations with billions in revenue, our FCC needed to do something. As any kind of regulatory agency, it's their purview to actually manage abuses of customers on those networks. Who here feels that $200 million spread out over 4 carriers is really going to teach these carriers a lesson? Anyone? Anyone in the live chat? Anyone listening to the audio version of this after I've recorded it live? I'm hearing the wind rustling through the leaves across my condo complex, and no one really seems to be speaking up that this is anything more than just a light slap on the wrist. Abraham Artemis, nah. Blue Malicious, not even a blip. LFA Reviews, tumbleweed rolls past. Again, without getting too into left-right politics, the purpose of some type of punitive damages settlement, the funds that we hit these corporations with, should be behavior altering. Like, it should sting enough that the company decides it's not worth doing business like that. $200 million over these 4 corporations is basically a minor tax that they'll have to pay, and doesn't really change how they do business with third-party organizations, because their spec sheets are likely showing that they're making way more money off of certain business practices than they'll ever have to pay in fines. I got a handful of comments like, oh, see, like the FCC is actually doing something. And to me, this really felt like, once again, the people in charge at the FCC are working very, very hard to maintain the status quo and protecting the business interests of the largest corporations in the United States. And I think that that's disappointing. Jessica Rosenworcel has been one of the most vocal. She is a chairwoman on the FCC, one of the commissioners, and she's been one of the voices of reason in here for all of these conversations involving the FCC. The trade and location data has emerged as a sensitive privacy issue because it affects hundreds of millions of people and can reveal intimate details about their lives, including personal relationships and visits to doctors. Quote, it puts the safety and privacy of every American with a wireless phone at risk, Jessica Rosenworcel, a Democratic commissioner at the FCC, said in a statement last month about the agency's investigation. And this also calls into question numerous issues with safety and security for elected officials. It's through some of these data brokering practices that some of President Trump's security detail were located and tracked using these methods in almost real time. So again, this isn't liberals want this and conservatives want that. I feel like the privacy conversation needs to transcend the common lockup patter of liberals versus conservatives. We might disagree on some of the policy and some of the regulatory actions, but I think we should all be able to agree there's a problem here and we need to work out what the solution might be. We need to talk about this like grown-ups to try and fix this issue. Let me get this out of the way here. I've got to go back in. I think I might have lost a story. Hold on 1 second. I'm real bad at this. Podcasting is hard. Okay. You know what? We're just going to skip that. I had notes on another FCC story, but I think we can move on. We don't have to front load too much tech and politics, and we're already into the first half hour of this show. Matt Tyler, $200 million each, fair enough, but $200 million between them, nope. 1 week of contracts and ads, and their money's back, unless T-Mobile may be paying Sprint's fine. Well, yeah, and we had more news last week about Sprint and T-Mobile. Their merger wasn't going to be challenged by the New York Attorney General. Blue Malicious, small fines like this prove them right for doing it. It's Thexy Pat. That's why I should be a dictator. Offense number 1, a warning and or a petty fine. Offense number 2, 25% of gross receipt as a fine. Offense number 3, government seizure of the assets. Shareholders lose. Management personally liable. And Gary the Fireman, you want Matt and I to have a grown-up conversation? I mean, as much as we could hope for. I'm going to see if I can... I got blackout curtains, so it's just taking some of the heat off. I love this window, but I was getting a bit sweaty last week during the podcast. All right. I just wanted to bring this up. I'm not going to dig too deep into this. It's a very colorfully written storytelling editorial on hearing health, and this is just going hand in hand with my hashtag 2020 hearing initiative. Let me screen share this here. Oh, and let me drop the links in the live chat also if you guys want to follow along. So this is someone sharing their personal experiences with headphones and hearing health. From InsideHook.com, AirPods are ruining your ears. Here's what to wear instead. Written up by Tanner Garrity, February 26. On a recent flight back from the United Kingdom, it took me almost 4 hours to take off my earbuds. I'd slipped them on right after the gate attendant announced Group 4 boarding, then proceeded to storm through 3 downloaded playlists on Spotify, watched a couple episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and slip into that pseudo-sleep state that only occurs up in the stratosphere when delirious exhaustion wins out over a cramped plastic seat and a blanket thinner than a cocktail napkin, if only for an hour or two. When I took off my earbuds somewhere off the coast of Greenland, and just before a trip to the bathroom, I was rocked by the ferocious volume of the plane, a United commercial airliner. My seat was towards the back of the aircraft and behind the engines where engine noise reaches its apex, and it sounded like a lawnmower was yelling over a leaf blower in a nightclub. The more scientific term for that level of noise, 90 decibels. At takeoff, planes reach an unholy decibel max of 115, but at cruise, they hover between 85 and 90. It's a menacing cocktail of sound, engines, wind, air conditioners, and terrified babies. So there's some really good data in here, breaking down what some of the limits are on what OSHA declares as a safe listening level for construction noise versus what we encounter in daily life. And when you factor that in against the number of people that you see wearing open ear style earbuds, AirPods and EarPods from Apple being the most popular options by a wide margin of all new wired and wireless earbuds, this is why I really don't believe the argument of situational awareness being the driving factor of why people like buying AirPods. When you're in a situation like heavy traffic noise around you, when you're on an airplane and you see people rocking AirPods, not only can they hear all of the noise around them still leaks directly into their ears, but then if they want to listen to any audio, they've got to crank the volume. And so they're likely listening at a volume level competing with noise that is already potentially damaging to your ears over a long period of time. There is no safety net there. There is no way to walk that back. There is no, well, I'll only listen at half volume, because you're still adding noise to a surrounding environment that is very, very loud. And like this article says, especially if you're in the second half of the plane, where I'm often in the cheap seats. So this is a growing concern, and we need to do better than just a little loose active noise canceling. We need to properly discuss what tools are better solutions. And those of you who have already purchased other types of headphones like over-ear cans, the relief that you feel from blocking some of that noise is palpable. I love wearing big, chunky, closed-back cans on airplanes and then not even really listening to any audio on them, just literally the earmuffs to block some of the noise that's being generated all around me. So again, this is a slightly more entertaining read through some flowery, man, talking is hard, flowery language, but with some good data and some good links to some of the information that kind of confirms some of their worries. You know, if you have to turn your AirPods up to the last 1 or 2 volume clicks, you really only get about 10 minutes of listening before you're doing permanent damage to your hearing. If you've ever turned up your AirPods to maximum and you've listened for more than 8 minutes, that's it. You have actually harmed what's going on inside your ear permanently. That damage never heals itself. It never undoes itself. Geet Madden, the writing is so animated and Juan's narrator voice is making it even better. I want an audiobook by SomeGadgetGuy. I've been ripping off voice actors for years. From Book, it sucks that in-ear ANC solutions are gated by such a high barrier of entry. It does, but I would also say a good seal around the ear is more important than the best microphone modeling active noise cancellation. And if you would like a great rundown on some price-conscious, true wireless earbuds, you should be following LFA Reviews. Over the weekend, he put out a video. What was the price cap? Someone remind me. It was under $50. Some top true wireless options under $50. If you haven't watched that video, you should watch that video. The thing about that is, once you get a good seal around the ear when you're trying to block in noisy conditions, that's most of the battle right there. Active noise cancellation doesn't work well when you let noise into the ear. So once you've sealed up the ear, it's already like you're wearing earplugs. And there are also other options too, where you can replace the ear tips, go double flange, go wide flange, go triple flange. If you really want something that's going to get in there deep, you could go with Comply foam. There are so many different solutions that you can use to augment an inexpensive pair of earbuds, better protect your ears against noise around you, listen at a higher quality for your audio, and at a lower volume. I cannot preach this enough. The only issue is you do have to play around a little bit to get the right fit. It's not just as casually, generically lazy as plopping an AirPod right in front of your ear canal. That's just generically Apple's way of making this universally accessible and as inexpensive for them to manufacture as possible. So once you start getting to something that goes in the ear canal, you'll have to fiddle with it. There is going to be a curve to getting that in there and getting the right fit and finish. After that, though, I guarantee you, when you're in noisy conditions, you'll never want to go back. Guaranteed. And for someone like the Sentinel 909, unfortunately, I can only use earpods, those that don't go into your ear without getting a headache. And in noisy situations, I would say look at closed back cans. Look at maybe something where you could use a standalone ear plug, something that you can fit better to your ear canal with a solution like bone conduction. Andrew and I are big fans of aftershocks. There are other tools that can help you minimize the damage being done in specific situations. If you just want general call quality and a little bit of listening in sort of light conditions or around the house, AirPods are fine. You take them to the gym, you're walking around in a busy intersection with a lot of noisy vehicles passing by, or you're on an airplane with super loud engines, you should probably look at another solution. And not just in-ear solutions or sort of earbud solutions, but cans or on-ear, what are they called? Supra-aural headphones instead. From Heike in the live chat, can you phonetically spell out how to pronounce your name? Heikki, or someone who is better at international names than I am. You're dropping some great comments, and I don't want to keep butchering your name there. Sony WF-1000XM3s are a really good option, rocking them right now with ANC. I'll also send a shout out for the One Mores. The One More true wireless ANC are also super solid. The ANC on the One Mores is almost too good. It leaves me feeling a little disoriented. It's so good. Blue Malicious, Juan saying flange is where it's at. Matt Tyler also backing up the Sony XM3. Again, you're talking wireless. Sony's Bluetooth game is so strong. Their cans are great. Their earbuds are great. It's not much. We've kind of normalized higher prices across the tech landscape. Sony's wireless game is awesome. Sennheiser's wireless game is really strong. Jabra, solid offerings. Again, it's about finding the right combination of pros and cons to fit what you need. And then I'd always recommend having a few solutions for different situations. You don't buy just one super premium pair of headphones and use them for everything. Maybe you have something that's a little bit better for situational awareness, something that's better for working out in a gym, and then something that's better for an airplane. And you spread that cash out. Each one of those options is going to be way less expensive than just, well, I'll buy whatever's the most expensive from one company. LFA reviews, 35 decibels on the ANC on the One More is no joke. My wife rocks the One More neckband wireless with ANC, and she loves them. Dual driver, One More dual driver neckband. Flippin' great. I love their neckbands. Get that out of the way there. From Baseball Super, disclaimer, I don't use headphones. It's okay, Baseball. You can still hang out in this live stream. We won't kick you out. All right, we had a funny story that I wanted to put into the news block, just because, there's just something in the air. People who normally keep this stuff kind of quiet or they aren't airing their dirty laundry are speaking out against some of the more ridiculous business practices in the tech and media and entertainment spheres. Let me get this out of the way. So this one coming by way of CNBC, and it got a little bit of a splash on Reddit. And I just thought it was amusing, especially coming from the director it's coming from. Screen share this, and let me drop the link in the live chat for you. No, I accidentally clicked on something else. There we go. And drop that right there. Oh, Tech Girl 90 finally joined the stream. Everyone say, hey, Tech Girl 90. She's super fun to chat with on Twitter. Okay. From CNBC, written up by Sarah Whitten, Apple won't let bad guys use iPhones in movies, Knives Out director Rian Johnson says. I love that Rian Johnson basically just acts as a disruptor. All of his movies have been taking established genres and twisting them up. You want film noir? I'll give you film noir in high school. You want a caper film? Let me give you two brothers turning a caper film into almost a romantic comedy. You want a time travel film? Well, let's make a time travel film about a time traveler having to kill himself through time travel. Again, everything just gets twisted. Even his Star Wars film, let me dismantle everything you care about Star Wars. It worked for me, but again, I totally appreciate why other people did not like that movie. So Knives Out, a great film. Trying to figure out who the bad guy is in a movie? Look for the character that hasn't touched an iPhone. Rian Johnson, the writer and director of Knives Out, revealed that Apple will permit film productions to use its products on screen, but with one very big caveat. Villains can't have an iPhone on camera. Quote, I don't know if I should say this or not, Rian Johnson said in a Vanity Fair video. Not because, oh, come on, get out of the way. Not because it's lascivious or something, but because it's going to screw me on the next mystery movie that I write. But forget it. I'll say it. It's very interesting. Apple, they let you use iPhones in movies, but, and this is very pivotal, if you're ever watching a mystery movie, bad guys cannot have iPhones on camera. Every single filmmaker who has a bad guy in their movie that's supposed to be a secret wants to murder me right now. How fragile. There is so much market manipulation of this kind of presentation. Apple has enormous leverage over how they perpetuate the Apple brand and their messaging and their media and their marketing, to the point where they can leverage studios for how they display their products. And again, how fragile that representation must be if bad guy can't use iPhone. Just hilarious. I mean, that's proper silly. Again, Tech Girl 90. I thought that was an Onion article at first, but Apple is serious. JMX Warrior, not allowed an iPhone? That's stupid. And Sam, I still remember when Windows phones were used in recent TV and movies. There's like one season of Parks and Rec to the next. I want to say it's like season 4. Everyone goes from having just sort of generic flip phones to everyone having a Windows phone. And it's super obvious. But I miss that. I miss having like Nokia show up in science fiction films, or Sony. And any Sony branded property, they're all rocking Xperias. Like even in Into the Spider-Verse, they're all rocking Sony monolith hard angled smartphones, and I kind of love it. I really enjoy it. Q3 Becker just joined the live chat. Everyone say hey to Q3 Becker. Boang Bite. Well, Samsung did have a Kylo Ren edition on their Note line. They're not afraid of playing the heavy. JMX Warrior. Let's make a film where everyone has an iPhone and we're all bad guys. Matt Tyler. So someone mentioned this. What we should do is start a film where they're using an iPhone, and then at some point they switch phones, and that's when they turn and they become the villain. Superman Returns, they used Windows Phone. And Abraham Artemis, remember when people were using Blackberries for movies? Yeah, neither do I. Oh, poor Blackberry. Aditya Anil, the first movie I actually noticed the phone was in Suicide Squad. Amanda Waller was rocking an S7. Yeah, it's just kind of funny. These companies, especially between Samsung and Apple, we're talking about companies that pour more into marketing, their marketing budget, than many of their competitors can put into marketing, distribution, and manufacturing in total. Samsung as a company spent more on marketing than Procter & Gamble over 2018 to 2019. Procter & Gamble, I think they are now the world's top spending advertising brand. That gives them super lopsided control over every aspect of how we incorporate technology into our daily lives. And Apple, to the same token, they're this mega popular brand, and now they can tell storytellers what they can and can't do with products like that. And I know you have to protect your IP. I know you have to protect your trademarks and your copyrights and all that stuff. But this is punitively silly to be so sensitive and to think your brand image is so fragile that a movie villain using an iPhone, oh, can't have that. From Sam 20 miles. Bad guys want to root their devices and use Gcam, so there you go. And Boang Bite replying to Matt Tyler, and they all have evil English accents, because those are the villains. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. We're wrapping up news here. I am going to bail on that other FCC story. Maybe I'll link it in the show notes. It wasn't a big deal. But this is the part of the podcast where I want to take just a quick second to talk about how we can better support other content creators online, people telling stories, and making sure we have a diverse community of discussion on all of our favorite tech topics. I've been talking a lot recently about how algorithms manipulate what content you can see, and about now how public relations companies can actively try to harm smaller channels that don't play ball with what the media messaging on a new product they think the media messaging on a new product should be. This game is becoming very difficult to navigate. And someone who wants to start a new channel, or someone who has an established channel and they're just not evolving to meet this current flavor of media and distribution, we need to be doing a better job of supporting those content creators that we enjoy their content and we want to see them make more. Every podcast has a subreddit. My podcast is no different, but where some subreddits are focused on just link me cool news and that's what I'll talk about, or they become sort of fan hangout spots where it's just, oh, you can just tell me how cool you think I am as a podcast host. My podcast initiative, my Reddit initiative for my podcast is to highlight and distribute content from people who I think deserve more attention. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, once again, reddit.com/r/glowing youtube.com/glowing rectangles, you're going to find a small but growing community of people sharing phenomenal content from around the world. When you compare this against your subscribers feed on YouTube, you're going to see a much more diverse collection of topics and producers. Now, this is normally where I would say, here are the top 3 stories from the last week, but I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit to highlight some of my favorite stories from this week, because it's exceedingly rare. I shouldn't say this, actually. It's actually been a little bit more common over the last couple weeks. But it's a little bit more rare that my videos and my articles are ever at the top of the subreddit, but I actually landed the top 2 spots this last week because I haven't put out anything in a while, so I think there was just a slingshot effect of people happy that I finally got something out. So my V60 first look and my Galaxy S20 editorial are the top 2 spots on the subreddit this week, but I really wanted to jump beyond that because we've got some great killer side content. The number 3 spot coming by way of Dean Nimmin, 75,000 subscribers. This guy's a guru at helping people clean up their YouTube channels. If you are interested in untangling how YouTube, how to operate on YouTube, Dean Nimmin and Roberto Blake are 2 must-follow individuals. So here, he's just got a great video look at a budget mic for your phone. The Boya BY-LM10. It's a little clip-on lavalier mic that can work with your smartphone. These things are super handy if you want to improve the quality of your recording, because audio is often one of the things that we have the most issues with. And then let me scroll down here. A new player, the art of photography. We're starting to see more people sharing. I actually don't know this producer's name. We're starting to see more of his videos being shared. 600,000 subscribers, but while his channel is mostly focused on camera tech, he's actually been digging deeper into smartphone cameras. And so he's just sharing some of his thoughts on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. Is it an Alpha A9 in a smartphone? This is a great conversation talking about some of the newest features. Last week on this podcast, I nerded out hard on the Xperia. I am ridiculously excited for Sony's pivot, bringing back the headphone jack and incorporating even more of their camera division into the Xperia lineup. To me, as someone who shoots a ton of video on their phones, the fight between the LG V60 and the Xperia 1 Mark II is my most exciting fight of 2020. I am drooling, tripping over myself with anticipation for pitting those 2 phones against each other. The Xperia 1 versus the LG V50 was one of my most fun showdowns for me of last year. And so now we've got the art of photography contributing to this discussion. And I'm super happy to see people sharing some broader tech topics. Camera tech, man, we could always do with some more chat about camera tech. Then rounding out the list, the LG V60 first look from TK Bay. We've got Joshua Vergara checking out the Galaxy Buds Plus. We've got my sister from another mister. We've got Trisha Hirschberger cracking open a huge box from Alienware, which I'm sure is full of super fun, tasty goodies. I got to spend some time with the Asus bezel-free kit at Newegg. So we shot a video just on how to make a triple monitor setup, minimize the bezels on 3 monitors for gaming. We've got Terry Warfield talking about some lenses. We've got Josh also talking about the V60. Enabong doing a gaming review, or a gaming first look, I should say, on the V60. Dual screen while playing COD Mobile. That could be a lot of fun. And rounding out, this is now, I think, just past the top 10. Gary explains, build your own Arduino-like board for just a few dollars. So, if you've ever wanted to play with an Arduino, here's how you can make one. Like when Gary explains something, it's actually something worth explaining. I love that. That lineup is huge. Again, where I feel like so much of my YouTube feed was dominated by S20 editorials. It's too expensive. Here's an embargo first look hands-on review. You've seen that chain of terrible video titles out there. If you go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles and you've never been before, I guarantee you will find someone that you've never seen in your YouTube feed and that you're really going to like the content they produce. It might be a smaller channel. We're trying to help people who are just starting out monetize their channels because this work deserves to be monetized. It could be larger channels that are just struggling in this new age, or it could be some of these medium tier channels that are trying to pivot towards content that they feel best represents what their interests are. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. We got another surge of subscribers. We're at 680 members right now. We're seeing we're seeing a surge in upvotes. I'm seeing comments on these posts. I'm just encouraging and imploring people out there, please continue sharing from the subreddit. Please continue participating. It's these types of interactions that really help a smaller content creator recognize that there's an audience for their work. And then when something is growing in popularity on a smaller subreddit, there's the greater chance that they'll be shared on larger subreddits, and that can blow a channel up. That can provide that surge in viewership and subscribers that can really push a content creator over into another tier and to make sure that their work is getting properly rewarded. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Support your favorite content creators. Beyond just, again, and I'm eternally grateful for those of you that are upvoting my content, but beyond just me hosting this podcast and talking about stuff that I like, help everybody. We can use this as a platform to really, the rising tide lifting all ships. My contribution to this, but even on your own social media, through your own comments, your own interactions, your own subscriptions, this means so much to people out there making stuff on the internet. We don't always properly thank you as being part of this community, but trust me, we see it. We pay attention, and we know when folks are trying to help us out. Aditi Anil, Trish's live stream was super fun. Trish is always super fun. You should watch everything that Trish makes. She's amazing. Literally, I've worked with so many people in performance and in hosting and in content creation. She is a rarefied individual at the top of my list who makes every interaction effortless. When we were doing the live streams at Newegg, it was such a joy to be seated next to her. And I don't know that I've ever played off of someone as naturally as Trish, where we'd be in the middle of what our script was for the show, and she'd go off on a tangent, and I'd reply, and I'd bring her back, and then I'd go off on a cranky old man rant, and she would deftly navigate that back into the next part of the show. I just really can't say enough nice things about Trisha Hirschberger and how savvy she is at this game and how knowledgeable she is on these topics. I really feel like she's a gem. Matt Tyler trying to plug his own contribution. This is hilarious. Matt Tyler, TechSpert smartphones under 400 pounds now on Reddit. Please upvote and check it out. He wants that sweet, sweet Reddit karma, so go help him out. From Geet Madden 1991, I've gained at least 20 subs from your subreddit. It might not seem like a lot, but it means a lot to a channel of my size. Thank you. And Geet Madden, keep plugging along, man. I am happy to support and contribute and highlight. And this is one of the best ways that I've managed to create a community around that initiative. Baseball Super Trish has a Twitch channel. She does have a Twitch channel. That girl Trish, I think it's THTGRLTRISH. And she does great game streams. Excuse me. Her community is super chill, really fun hangout, very casual style streams. I mean, like, I watch her, but for me it was like once she had a kid, my favorite part of watching her streams was how she would try to self-censor because, sort of off camera, well, actually during her streams too. But she's just got like she swears like a sailor. In some of the most colorfully creative ways that I've ever heard people string swear words together. And so she was really trying to self-censor because her streaming room was right next to her son's nursery. So I would, again, highly recommend checking out her game streams. Watching her play Cuphead was hilarious because she was like trying to self-censor through a very frustrating game. From LFA Reviews, this is why I like our community. We share tech samples. Sometimes some of these companies won't give you a chance based on low subscriber count, so it's up to us more established creators to step in and help. Juan did this for me, and I do it for others as well. Pay it forward. Here. We're all in this together. And I don't mean that in some sort of contrived like, oh, well, we're all stuck here. I mean this truthfully and factually. There isn't the idea of competition between someone like LFA and me, or Super Review, or Board at Work, or some TK Bay, some of our favorite tech channels. When we're operating and working together, we do better work than when we're lone wolves. If it's hooking up someone with a review device because they couldn't, get their hands on one, or if it's just contributing to a part of a review, we all do better when the smallest players in our ecosystem are doing better. So I genuinely believe in this initiative, and I genuinely believe in having this conversation because I'm also selfish. Because when something like this takes off and we have a better platform to help share, it helps me out too. But immediately, it helps me primarily by having more fun content to watch, by having more opinions that I wouldn't have seen before, and not getting stuck in an echo chamber where only people who have 10 million subscribers on YouTube really get the to be highlighted on that platform, to be showcased on that platform. There are more opinions out there, and those opinions deserve to be heard too. Oh, Gary the Fireman with the correction. I think her Twitch channel is just Trisha Hirschberger. She might have pivoted away from that girl, Trish. I think you're right. I think I might have been wrong there. I've been subbed for so long. And LFA, Cuphead gives me PTSD flashbacks. It's, again, I love holding it up. My wife is not a super hardcore gamer, but I thought, it's a cute little platformer. She loves, like classic Super Mario style gaming. I put the controller in her hand, and before she could finish the tutorial, she almost chucked the controller at my monitor. It was about to leave her hand. She had to pull it back. Fury. She couldn't make it through the tutorial before she was legit angry. I love that game so much because it just kicks you in the butt over and over and over again, like Contra style. I love it. Okay. Second half of the podcast, we got some gadgets to talk about. I'm sort of leading this through the conversation to get to the Galaxy S20. I don't have one. I'm not doing an early review on the Galaxy S20. I will be getting my hands on the base model S20. I don't have a lot of interest in the Ultra. I kind of want to see what their solution is for the low end S20. Very much like how I focused my Samsung coverage on the S10e last year. That was the phone I was most interested in. But I'm wrapping up a few other things, and I don't feel any burning desire to try and play the game of launch week videos. Samsung doesn't, that's not really how I like producing content. So kicking off, I just want to talk first about some of the specs that we saw from some of the analytics that we saw from 2019. And this is going to help kind of inform where we're going to go with this part of the tech conversation. From Engadget, nearly every top-selling smartphone in 2019 was an iPhone or Galaxy. This is written up by John Fingus on Engadget. Few other phone makers got traction outside of China. So let me drop this in the live chat here. It's almost a cliche to say that Apple and Samsung dictate the tempo of the smartphone market, but there's now more evidence to support that claim. Counterpoint Research has calculated that 9 out of the top 10 smartphones sold worldwide in 2019 were made by either Apple or Samsung. Oppo's A5 was the only exception at 5th place. The iPhone XR had the clear lead, representing 3% of all phones sold, while the Galaxy A50 was the top Android phone on the list with 1.8%. I'm going to repeat that. In 2019, the top selling phone was the iPhone XR. And the top selling Android phone was the Galaxy A50. Those phones get great traction on YouTube. But when we really look at the devices that generate the most clicks, the most interest, the most views, it's almost always premier tier. 11 Pro versus Galaxy S10 Plus or S10 5G, or I've been guilty of, iPhone 11 Pro versus LG V50. Consumers are radically pivoting towards mid-range devices because right now we have foldable devices out near $2,000. And you look at like a Mate 10 or a Galaxy Fold. Halfway, the normal price is somewhere around $1,000 for the premium flagship market, and mid-rangers are now classified as phones somewhere around $500 or $600. If we remember, like 5 years ago, a $600 phone was premium tier. And we know consumers are trying to hold on to their phones even longer. The average ownership, depending on what analyst you follow, is somewhere between 28 and 30 months. Consumers want to hold onto their phones for longer than 2 years. We're talking about people trying to use these purchases for up to 3 years. And when they get back into the market and they're shopping for something, they're looking at phone prices from 3 to 5 years ago. Think about how many people you see out in the world around you that have iPhone 6s, that general form factor, a 6S or a 7, Galaxy S7s. The reality of this market, as reviewers are talking and hyping up and trying to bandwagon on $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 smartphones, has nothing to do with the realities of the consumer market. And this is also where media and messaging and competition is getting dangerously lean. Apple and Samsung can basically tell the rest of the smartphone market how to do business. If you want any difference or delineation from how Apple makes a smartphone or from how Samsung makes a smartphone, as those two companies are approaching the middle, everything that Apple does today, Samsung is going to make fun of and is then going to copy 2 years later. Removable batteries, removing the headphone jack, lower resolution displays. Samsung and Apple are meeting in the middle. So if you want a device outside of that dichotomy with features that Samsung and Apple have declared irrelevant, you increasingly do need to vote with your wallet and be that voice to help other consumers make some of those informed purchasing decisions. A Galaxy A50 is a great phone, but maybe for your aunt or uncle, a Pixel 3a might have been a better fit. Again, looking at the actual specs and features, price, performance, all of that stuff, that's where we as geeks really should be helping to contribute to this conversation, where we should be leading some of this conversation. From the Sentinel 909, my mom's still using her Galaxy S7 Edge. I was talking about it before too. My mom was on a Galaxy S5 until the middle of last year when she flipped it for a OnePlus 6T. And she really, I was kind of pointing out, well, you could look at this, you could look at that. And I had her use the OnePlus 6T. And again, coming from her Galaxy S5, it was like, oh, wow, this is so fast. And she had also just gotten a Tesla, so she kind of needed a new phone to go with her new car, because my mom's a nerd like that. It's just hilarious. But yeah, she was like, oh, this is a screamer. And she was looking at Galaxy S9 prices. And at that time, we were just in that transition to the OnePlus 7, and the OnePlus 6T was kind of on a loose sale. It was like $30 cheaper than it was at launch. And so she was like, oh, well, yeah, like $700-800. Oh, this phone's $500. Oh, I'm getting this phone. So my issue here, though, is making that targeted individual recommendation is what we can do on the ground. It's also how I want us to approach reviewing these gadgets at the sort of most visible tier. I have a hard time with reviewers who focus on the lowest common denominator use while mostly highlighting and showcasing the most expensive gadgets. I don't think there's a problem with increasing smartphone prices. I personally have a use case for $1,000 plus phones. Again, if you catch my LG V60 hands-on video, shot, edited, recorded, rendered, and uploaded on an LG V50, I feel like I got $1,000 worth of use in how I used the phone to fix the issue of not having my studio to shoot and edit in, not having my mirrorless cameras handy because I was in the middle of a move. That phone fulfilled a necessary work commitment for me, and that video is doing really well on YouTube. I think it's over 30,000 views. So that's a professional use. So I have a need, and I can demonstrate how a $1,000 phone helps me. I would never recommend that phone to my family members unless there were very specific desires that they had. Like, they just absolutely needed the best possible headphone jack. Okay, we're talking LG there probably. But, you know, my sister and her husband are rocking Pixel 3As. There is not a use case that I can imagine where they would enjoy the LG V50 at the price that they would have to pay to buy one on a carrier, right? So that's really where I feel we need to differentiate this conversation a bit more. If someone's picking up a $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 smartphone, and they're doing the same basic speed tests and synthetic benchmark testing, and they kind of open a few apps, and they're not pushing the device more than that, then there's no point in talking about that device. That's the kind of use that's easily satisfied by a $300 phone. We've moved on. And from the Sentinel 909, Mr. Who's the Boss is the only big YouTuber that consistently covers mid-rangers and even budget phones. There are a few others out there. Who else was doing a pretty good job tackling that mid-range? Well, Matt Tyler loves TechSpert too. But I mean, wasn't your average consumer doing a run on some less expensive phones for a while too? Again, I mean, it just takes a little bit more hunting to find some of these conversations. From Heike, usually I buy secondhand flagships, don't have to pay premium, but still getting premium. I got the Xperia 1 for €400. That's a good buy. I think I need to go and buy a used Xperia 1. I really, really, really liked that phone. From Sam Miles, for me, I'd never spend $1,400 on the S20 Ultra. Not a snowball's chance in hell. From Necromage07, it's just consumerism though. Most people don't need what they buy. It does not generate revenue, but people want to feel good and be part of something, and I cannot fault that. It's not that I can fault that either, but if we're talking about reviewers, I'm not trying to shame a consumer's individual choice. If flexing with an S20 Ultra or an iPhone 11 Pro is your jam, then go spend that cash. But if that's the reason, then we're talking about devices like we're talking about purses. I am not a fashion lifestyle vlogger. I am a tech reviewer. I do not make commercials for brands. I talk about my experiences using a phone within the context of my perspective. So through the lens of my likes and dislikes, I'm trying to share and communicate how this device performed for my needs and my use. And maybe you can learn something from that, or maybe our experiences are too different and you're not going to appreciate what it is that I talk about or bring to the table. So if a reviewer's job is to inform and educate, then we need to be taking a more critical eye as to ever increasing prices versus expected use and balanced against manufacturers' claims. When PR goes out there and says, this is a pro grade camera, we should test that by the metrics we have to see how professionals really get their work done. If it's just, we're talking about this because it's popular, then that needs to be categorized as another flavor of infotainment, which is designed to confirm the preconceived biases of people that have already purchased the phone. And I think we can all think of a handful of YouTube channels that split on that ideology. The people that are very consistent in sharing their unique perspective, I'll call out, because that's a positive, I'll call out someone like a Flossie Carter. I don't always agree. I often disagree with Flossie, but I've never felt like he manicured his opinion based on the popularity of a gadget or the popularity of a brand. And I think, not to name anyone specifically, I think we can all think of a handful of channels where how popular a company is dictates whether or not that company gets a positive review. And that I find to be upsetting, because it's very easy to piggyback on the media and marketing of a Samsung, and Samsung's enormous marketing budget does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and then only make videos that confirm the preconceived bias of a large consumer market. And that's not a reviewer. That's an infotainment host who is making a focused channel just to entertain people who have already agreed with the analytics and the metrics. Oh, and again, a bunch of people here in the chat already beat me to it. Franklin Goodwin, Q3 Becker, Sentinel 909, Floss is super real. Not glitzy. He's not trying to make cinematic videos. He's got the same review setup he's always had. Top-down camera, just two hands handling the gadget. He deserves so much more respect than I think he currently gets through YouTube's current algorithm. And again, Necromage, this is, tech has been made sexy, and this is what investors want. Again, I'm not making an investor channel. I am not qualified to tell you how to invest your money. I'm not making a fashion channel or a vlog channel. I'm trying to hold to a consistent style of reviewing. And that's what needs to be disclosed. If you come to my channel, you might not understand what I'm about. I'm about camera performance, audio performance, and I like trying to push a phone to displace laptop use. That's increasingly what I'm looking at when I'm looking at a phone. I also want consumers to get as much use and power out of a device as they can. So I'm testing really silly and ridiculous things like 4K video rendering, and I revamped my test bench for compression. So you get raw compression tests and looking at, what stabilization plugins we've got and access to camera modes beyond just auto awesome HDR. That's what I'm about, because that's legitimately what I need to accomplish day to day. And it's also what I like. My family memories are crafted through these tools. I did a video of my daughter's first haircut. Soundtrack is Janelle Monáe. No edit is longer than 1 second. It's a punchy, fast, aggressive, playful video, shot, edited, rendered, shared, all from my V50. It's not going to go public because I don't put, content of my daughter out publicly, but my whole family got to see that. And when she gets older, her first haircut is a Janelle Monáe music video. And I was in the salon starting to edit that video after she had finished her haircut and gotten a lollipop. Like the immediacy and the power of these pocket computers is insane. And I want more people to do stuff like that. I want to see more videos from my family that aren't just shaky, long, raw, uncut garbage videos. Oh, and from Arctic Grim, the reason I enjoy Gadget Guy videos. Well, thank you very much. Here's something that's a little bit sad. I was just saying how much I love these kinds of content creation tools in mobile devices. The Android community is taking a hit. There was a little snarkiness about this, but I'm just genuinely sad. Oh, TK Bay is in the live chat. Everyone say, hey, TK, because that's TK, my Bay. Ha ha ha. Let me get this queued up here. This is coming by way of Droid Life. They shared the actual email and the message from the Moment creative team. Screen share this here. So Moment pulls the plug on its Android app because Android, written up by Kellen on Droid Life. Moment, the camera accessory store that has grown in popularity thanks to their attachable camera lenses for phones, announced a bit of sad news today. The company doesn't plan to continue developing its Moment Pro camera app going forward on Android. Now, here's the actual letter that they sent to some of their customers over email. Hey everyone, I'm one of the founders of Moment, and I have some bad news about Pro Camera for Android. We love Android, but unfortunately we don't have the engineering bandwidth to continue developing this app. It breaks our heart to say this, but we've spent the last 2 years, yes, 2 full years, trying to deliver a pro-level manual camera app for Android. It should be simple, but unfortunately it's not. The short story is that phone makers like to create their own flavor of Android, each with different amounts of access to select camera features. The result has been a random compatibility list where each phone has different features in the app by phone model. The problem only gets worse every time a new version of Android comes out because it breaks the custom modifications these phone makers have made with their phones. Despite years of messaging phone makers to share their changes and make camera features available to us, we haven't been able to change this culture. I wish we had dozens of engineers to continue developing this app, but we don't. The app is still live in the Play Store, and we plan to leave it here for any customers who want to shoot with it. Going forward, if you are looking for a pro-level app for Android, we do recommend Filmic Pro. It is more expensive, but they're the best example of a pro-level camera app for Android. If you don't have or want Filmic Pro, we recommend DaVinci Resolve or Handbrake, both as great options to de-squeeze anamorphic footage in post. The team worked really hard on this product, and it's sad not to be able to continue our work on it. We still love Android and will continue to make great gear for all of you. Thank you for your support, Mark Barros, co-founder of Moment. It's a major bummer. Google, I think Google deserves the lion's share of the blame for where we're at in how, again, I hate this word because it's starting to not mean anything, but the fragmentation of the Android market. Even when they have pushed an initiative like the Camera 2 API, which should have helped with some of this development that the Moment co-founder is mentioning in this letter, it doesn't mean that any manufacturer is really subject to operating with that API. For example, a manufacturer, I think, who is making a smart pivot and coming back to their senses, but operated like this for far too long, was Sony. From the XX days through the XZ3, there was a shocking amount of neglect towards these expanded feature sets and third-party camera apps. And again, it was sort of a Sony arrogance through those years of phones where Sony decided you didn't need RAW access. So it wasn't that they just didn't include it in their own camera app. They prevented you from pulling RAW files through a third-party camera app. And the flip side of this is companies that are really trying to push the boundaries on what Android can do have to come up with creative solutions for the limitations of the platform. So, like from the LG V40 to the LG V50, LG needs to create a metric poop ton of custom software to find creative solutions around the limitations of Snapdragon chipsets. A triple camera on the LG V40 was actually a pretty significant engineering challenge given that chipset's native support for different camera modules. And then you look at some of the ridiculous experiments like the Nokia 9, biting off way more than Nokia could really chew, than HMD could really chew with that generation of chipset. And they found some creative solutions, but those solutions get in the way of customer expectations on how cameras should work. So it's twofold. You know, Qualcomm puts out a chip with a certain spec with ISP support, and maybe a manufacturer for a phone wants to do something above and beyond. Well, LG's camera stack is going to be very different than another phone manufacturer who's really making something closer to Qualcomm spec. And that means an LG device is going to be way harder to support for a third-party camera app manufacturer like Moment or Filmic. Still, I think to this day, LG smartphones don't properly support things like 4K at 60 frames per second through Filmic. Something you just take for granted in the native LG camera app because LG had to do a lot of software hoop jumping to enable those features and employ them in a way where they're easy for consumers to use. So on the one hand, I can appreciate LG just doesn't want to give all that stuff up and let a competitor to their software run with some of that feature set and functionality. But that also means a company like Filmic or like Moment is going to be increasingly less likely to support Android in this state where every manufacturer has a different solution for enabling some of these fun extra camera features. This is where, Google needs to be more of a driving force. I mean, not just the punitive side, not just the stick side of forcing manufacturers to use more open standards, but also the carrot side, the incentives. If we look at the Pixel 4 as an indication of where Google goes with hardware, that's not necessarily as exciting when we look at the total camera package that we're expecting phones to have in 2020. So Google needs to be a bit more, not just future-proofing with the software, but also a bit more aggressive with the future of hardware. And Google's not great with hardware. They're really not. This is why Apple, gets to take the lead, and it looks like Apple invented more of this stuff than they really did. But at least triple camera on the iPhone 11 Pro worked smoother than any of the previous implementations of triple camera that we've seen through the Snapdragon 845 and 855 days. It looks smoother and it's more responsive because Apple natively built that camera module around the chipset that was going to support it. And vice versa. They probably influenced the A13's performance to be able to achieve that type of hardware camera stack. So it's really just a bummer. On the one hand, I don't have a ton of sympathy because I feel like Moment could have enabled something for how most of these cameras function, for how G camera ports operate on a number of Android phones, or at least just put out a more limited compatibility list. Like, we're going to support Samsung phones and Pixels, and then if there's other interest, we can look at, providing support for other devices too. I feel like they tried to put out a general third-party camera app and then got a ton of negative feedback because they weren't really looking at what phones were properly supported. But it's just, it really is a bummer. Anytime we lose competition in this space, it's bad. I don't know how to properly recommend pro-grade use for smartphone consumers if we're lacking good players to enable this functionality. Filmic is great on some phones. It's a lot more limited on other phones, and you kind of don't know what phones are going to be properly supported for all of the functionality of Filmic until you buy Filmic, which is kind of an expensive app, and put it on your phone. There's no compatibility chart for 60 frame per second 4K video. I feel like that should be a thing. Like, we should be able to just point to. And then also say, like, why doesn't the V50, why isn't the G8 supported for that? That's frustrating. And so then it becomes, what phones do you recommend? I have to stick with phones that have native manual video options. Hopefully, the Galaxy S20 can compete in that space again, and then it's LG. And as far as I know, they're the only ones. That's not good. We want more than that. It's a bummer. It really is. Hold on, let me kind of get back through. There are a lot of comments on this. A lot of pressing F to pay respects, folks. I completely appreciate that. Necromajo7, there's no unified API. Fat Produce, I can hear Moment playing the world's smallest violin. Oh. Matt Tyler, a Nokia with solid cameras and hardware, 700 series, possibly around 400 to 500. Q3 Becker, thinking about superior auto always makes me laugh. Yeah, me too. Fat Produce likes the frame on the poster that he sent me, so I'm glad about that. I need to get something better over there. It's just a simple black frame, but that poster is so trick. I love it. The Sentinel 909, Google is fast losing its camera edge. The thing I appreciate with the Pixel 4 is that they're not trying to make the same claims as Apple. I really do think that the changes that Google made to the Pixel 4 camera app continue to further its lead as the most easily accessible auto shooter around. I think the changes that Apple brought to the iPhone 11 camera make it more difficult to use, make it more fiddly, and are very unfamiliar for how we used to use iPhone cameras, with a lot of odd duplication of features. You know, the little caret that they have at the top of the screen duplicates functionality with where we used to dock certain controls. I don't think Apple's evolution has been very graceful. But Google hasn't been trying to make the claim that the Pixel is a pro-grade camera. And so the changes that Google made in streamlining the Pixel 4, I think are on point. But beyond that, if you want to dig a little deeper than just really good, juicy auto HDR colors, neither of those phones are really good. You need a lot of software support and hoop jumping to make those phones perform like more professional tools, where Samsung, maybe a Huawei, LG deliver much better functionality out of the box. Mbuk, Juan, speaking of Pixel, the March update adds some really good features. I actually need to see if I can fire that up. I don't think I've gotten the March update yet. And the Sentinel 909. By the way, I love the less cluttered look of the studio. Not sure if it's by design or just by consequence. A little of both. We got, where are we? 10:30. Okay, good. So here's where we're going to get into the last chunk of this. I'm going to start off our conversation about the S20 talking about LG. Haven't you always noticed that in a lot of LG videos and reviews that people don't really talk about the LG phone and instead just talk about how you should buy another phone like a Samsung? So to talk about the Galaxy S20, we're going to start by talking about LG. Let me cue this up here. I'm going to drop this in the live chat. So here's the deal. 2020 is going to be a really weird year. I talked about this a little in my V60 first look, that hands-on video. Marketing and PR companies are scrambling like crazy as we watch trade shows shutter. Losing MWC was a bad hit to companies that don't run their own media events like Apple and Samsung. The ability to get the message out on a new product, the old relationship was you go to Barcelona and all of the tech media is there. So when LG doesn't have access to that single point of contact for all of these major outlets, that's a bad hit. They're trying to pivot, but we don't know what the messaging outcome is going to be. And I think 2020 is going to be a hard year for a lot of these companies. And what they learn from this year will probably set them up better for 2021. More personalized, smaller events, hands-ons, things like that, I think actually will do well for companies like Sony and LG and OnePlus, all of these other players that don't get the same media spectacle that Apple and Samsung get. But then we look at stories like this, and it looks like we're in for an even more challenging year, not just for the marketing. Displays, components, parts, pieces, pricing, and distribution all rely on a very intricate web of shipping and receiving. So this is written up again by John Fingus over at Engadget. LG Display halts work at phone screen factory after coronavirus infection. I could probably read this whole article here. It's not very long. Samsung isn't the only Korean tech giant grappling with coronavirus infections. LG Display has temporarily halted work at a smartphone screen factory in Gumi, South Korea, after a bank worker near the facility tested positive for COVID-19. The company expected to resume production on March 3rd, but didn't say what kind of effect it expected the closure to have on phone output. While there are undoubtedly concerns this could hurt availability of LG's own phones, it might not be the only company hit by the shutdown. LG Display makes screens for a range of companies, including some of Apple's iPhones. A closure of just a few days could lead to shortages if there isn't enough supply beforehand. The latest coronavirus outbreak has been damaging to tech companies across the board. Apple has warned of iPhone shortfalls. Microsoft said it won't meet expectations due to COVID-19's impact on the PC world, and that's not including canceled trade shows. The industry may be reeling for a while. It just comes down to which companies will feel the pinch. And this is very concerning because a smartphone team like LG can't really continue suffering bad hits. You know, one of the key selling points of the V60 is going to be dual displays for a phone. Whatever your feelings are about refresh rates and resolution, whenever I show off the LG G8X in public, people get very interested in what that phone can and can't do. And again, it's overwhelmingly positive interest. The only person I've had shrug it off is someone who had a Note 9. Okay, whatever, I got an S Pen. S Pen's better than two screens. I'm kind of straw manning what he said, but it wasn't too far off from that kind of a dismissive tone because his phone is the best. It's scary stuff. So when we look at the possible disruption to one company like LG, I'm curious what kind of an impact this is going to have on a major player like Samsung. As we also got commentary, early sales on the S20, not doing great. So here's the Korea Herald, and I wanted to start with this article because it's on Samsung's home turf in South Korea. Initial sales of Galaxy S20 series downbeat amid virus fears. Sales of Samsung Electronic Company's Galaxy S20 smartphones were lackluster on their first day, 50% lower than their predecessors amid the spreading coronavirus outbreak. Samsung Electronics sold an estimated 70,800 units of the latest smartphone series in the domestic market on Thursday, sharply lower than first-day sales for the previous series, the Galaxy S10 phones launched in March last year. The Galaxy S10 series sold 140,000 units first day, while the Galaxy Note 10 shifted 220,000 units when they were launched in August. This is where I'm going to get cynical. First, I don't enjoy seeing a market leader like Samsung slip. The future and the fate of Android is inextricably linked, entwined with a company like Samsung. It's a contentious relationship between Samsung and Google, but if Samsung in 1 year takes a bad hit, that's actually bad for the Android ecosystem as a whole. And we already are starved for good competition against Apple and the iPhone. We should take no joy in Samsung slipping on sales at the premium tier of the smartphone market and making some moves that are probably going to turn off consumers for the flagship tier, the premium flagship tier of devices. But that leads me to my second point. I feel like Samsung is not properly addressing the changes in this market and pointing to something like the coronavirus does not explain the reduction in first day sales and units sold. That batch of phones was already committed. It wasn't like people aren't buying the Galaxy S20 because they're having difficulty getting the phone, that Samsung is having difficulty fulfilling their distribution. Those first wave of phones are out there and people aren't buying them. And this to me speaks to a much larger change in the consumer perception of what a premium gadget should cost and how much money they're going to spend on something like a phone, and what expectations we have for how phones should improve. Because I feel like if you've been on a Galaxy S9, the daily driver, in the hand, social media, taking calls, replying to messages, emailing experience hasn't changed much since the Galaxy S8. And we've been in a holding pattern for a while on what a top-tier phone should do to push the market. A faster chipset, a slightly nicer camera. Faster chipset, a slightly nicer camera. We'll get rid of some features too. You like headphone jacks? Well, those are gone now. You want expandable storage on a Note? Say goodbye. You don't get to add a memory card anymore. Those are all tiny little niche features that very few people actually ever use. Memory card expansion? I bet Samsung has great data to suggest a tiny portion of their consumer base ever really utilize that feature. But once you start cutting it and you start looking at how much phone you get for how much money, man, the choice between a Note 9 and a Note 10 gets a lot more serious. So the Note 10 is going to be a little bit faster at these synthetic benchmarks, but I get a headphone jack and memory card expansion. Your power user who talks about the Note to their family and friends has a difficult choice to make. And that's where I've been even more anxious about the kind of discussion that we're supposed to have about Samsung when they launch a phone like the Galaxy S20. And the Galaxy S20 comes out at $999. And it's a tough conversation to have against an iPhone at $1099. And we also know that the international community of smartphone buyers are pivoting ever harder to Galaxy A series and other mid-ranger devices. And a premium expensive phone for a lot of consumers these days looks more like a OnePlus 7 Pro and less like a Galaxy S. But Samsung's really trying to get us excited about a statement phone like the Galaxy Z Flip. It starts to read as tone deaf. It starts to read as elitist and exclusionary, not sexy and exclusive. And that's bad. So much of this purchasing is done on an emotional level. Like we were talking, some of our previous stories. Someone gets excited emotionally about a super premium label and a super premium gadget, and that drives the sale. But Samsung can't command the same kind of marketing reality distortion field that Apple can as a lifestyle brand. They're the closest. They're the company that comes the closest to making their tech products fashion. But no one is really piggybacking. No one is able to properly go toe-to-toe with Apple for a label that generates that kind of sales. That Apple logo is just as valuable as Louis Vuitton, you know, and slapping it on a product means something. And that's a flex, and then people care about their white AirPods. I don't want Samsung to flop. I feel we really need Samsung to succeed. As much as Samsung acolytes and the Samsung Knights on YouTube comments are absolutely insufferable, the direction they're taking their company with the top tier products is not where I think they should go. Especially if our primary, the primary horse we have in this race is competition. Our products get better when there's competition. Our services get better when there's competition. this makes me sad because it just sort of confirms where we've been on this track from the Galaxy S8 to the Galaxy S20. Well, actually, again, analyst numbers take them with a huge rock of salt, but we've been on a downward spiral trajectory for the premium phones since the Galaxy S8. And if memory serves me, and someone please look this up while I'm talking about it and correct me if I'm wrong, but sales for Galaxy S10 series phones were roughly 1/4 what they were for Galaxy S8 series phones. So from S8 to S9 to S10, we've seen a steep drop-off in consumer engagement with these premium labels in this premium tier. I personally do not want this premium tier to go away. I genuinely enjoy using these phones and talking about these phones, but I also need to recognize I am not doing the best job I could at talking about mid-ranger devices that are going to be the bread and butter daily driver phones that people really genuinely care about. Where an iPhone 11 or an iPhone 10R was the top selling phone of last year. That means that something has changed in our culture, and I'm personally not doing a great job of reflecting what that change looks like. So I should probably be doing better about that too. But I also need to recognize the manufacturers who are feeding and seeding these devices out to reviewers are the ones that are going to be leading this conversation. And they're leading this conversation in a direction that general consumers will not follow us on. General consumers are choosing a different path. And if we don't recognize that, then the smartphone is properly a dead category. It's a commodity device. And it won't really be fun to talk about in this fashion. So that's my rambling. Outside of just what I've seen from some of my other favorite reviewers, the Galaxy S20 looks like a fine phone. It's going to be a solid performer. It seriously disappoints me that they cut the headphone jack after buying my favorite microphone manufacturer in AKG, slapping that AKG label on Samsung products with somewhat reckless abandon. I'm kind of getting the feeling with Samsung that I had with Apple when I used to work at DOE. So I worked for a contractor that serviced Apple and HP products. And at the time, we were deep into the Power Macs, the IBM Power PC generation of devices, dual core, dual socket, liquid cooled, incredible workstations. And then after the Intel pivot, it just felt like Apple just kept taking baby steps away from me as someone who considered themselves a power user of those devices. And now I'm kind of feeling Samsung's making a similar pivot. It's more profitable to copy Apple on changing your audience and trying to appeal emotionally more than making world-class, top-tier, insurmountable products. If you caught me on Twitter, I was super disappointed that the battery that I got in my Galaxy Note 4 is properly starting to fail. Galaxy Note 4, I continue to hold up as one of the best smartphones ever made, and truly one of the most disruptive smartphones ever made. This phone was so ahead of the curve on so many technologies that we now take for granted in modern smartphones. From the super high resolution OLED display, the larger camera sensor with image stabilization that supported 4K video, the more reinforced and rugged build, the reinforced corners against the bezels for drop protection, the seam that runs along the side of the phone so that you had clearance between the bezel and the glass and the metal. Everything about this phone was just balls to the wall. Let's break stuff and let's make this thing insanely more powerful than our competitors can keep up with. I look at the Galaxy S20 and I don't see this Samsung anymore. I see a Samsung that's perfectly fine with compromises and leverages their clout and their marketing budget to just keep people thinking that Samsungs are the default de facto only option in this space, But that's not the reality of how these gadgets actually perform. There are plenty of compromises to be found on a Samsung device now. The Note 4 for its time was, I feel like, the only true representative of a no compromise, this is where tech can take us kind of device. To the point, why I'm sad that my Note 4 battery failed is I still use the Note 4 on almost every single video I produce in a gadget lab. It's very limited use, but tons of screen on time. This is where I organize and categorize my show notes and my documents. And then I also use it as the display for a little mini teleprompter system. This thing is so good for that. Even down to like the grippy material on the back, because my teleprompter has these little plastic edges on it. So if I use a phone with a glass back, here I can show you on camera. If I use a phone with a glass back, it just slides right out of this little caddy that I use to display my scripts and my notes. The Note 4 does not have that issue. A plastic back phone, no good. Glass back phone, no good. Note 4, amazing. So I am shopping. I'm going to get a replacement battery for it, and I'm going to keep using the Note 4 for that function. It's gratifying. It's exciting. Here's a phone that's, 6 years old now? Almost 7 years old? And I can still count on it for daily use. No, like 6 years old. It's not 7 years old. I can still count on it for a professional application in how I get my work done. And I don't have that same feeling about a modern smartphone today. 6 years from now, am I really going to be looking back at my V50 and incorporating it into my workflow in a meaningful fashion? Will I even be able to get the battery replaced? Because, for my Note 4 battery failing, hold on, boom, there's the battery. Because I'm a grown-up, I can manage popping out this battery. It just makes me really sad that that's where we've turned in smartphone design, and that for Samsung acting like they were the disruptor, that they were the company that was going to stick it to Apple. They fell in line pretty quick when they started seeing numbers on how much money they could make. And it's just disappointing. It really is. All right, let me get through some of these comments and then we can wrap this show up, and we'll be right at 2 hours. From the Sentinel 909, I have a feeling the S20 is selling badly also due to the fact that they were aggressively marketing the S20 Ultra and the Z Flip, effectively cannibalizing their own products. And not just those two phones, but I think Samsung deserves a lot of praise for making the Galaxy A series even better. So now the Galaxy S, the S20 and the S20 Plus are facing competition from both sides internally. If you want the statement phone, you want to flex with your fancy phone, you've got options at $1,400 to show that you can spend a lot of money on a phone. But if you want the daily driver stuff, I think an A series is actually going to be more in line with what most average consumers are really looking for. From Muppinish, how hyped are you for the LG V60? I'm thinking of getting it. I'm very optimistically anxious about the V60. There are a few changes that I'm concerned about. It's a big phone, and I miss having a Mighty Mouse LG. Like every time I pick up my LG G6, it's perfect. I really want that form factor again, and I know I'm never going to get it. But when it comes to LG making a pivot towards a more reasonable price, a flashy accessory with the dual screen display, and if they can really improve on some of that camera stack, they could be in a good position to pair up well against Samsung. Samsung did not handle moving to a larger image sensor very gracefully, and I'm hoping that LG does not fall into the same trap. These reports on shaky performance and bad color processing and bad image processing and autofocus hunting and all this stuff, a lot of this comes from the fact that they wanted to keep the big numbers like the aperture, but when the sensor size gets larger, that's going to have a hit on your image quality if you don't properly account for it. And they did that at the same time as they got rid of their variable aperture. So Samsung punched themselves in each of their gonads by making that change and not anticipating general consumer photography and why there's a reason why we have things like slightly smaller apertures. It's why the Nokia Lumia 1020 had an f2.2 aperture, not an f2 or an f1.8. That little extra depth of field, or I should say, the longer depth of field was a significant benefit for the Lumia 1020. From Steve, from Q3 Becker. Some gadget guy is excited about the ASMR mode on that LG V60. I can't handle ASMR. From Abraham Artemis, it's hard to justify even a $700 or $800 phone, to be honest. And again, it's just we need to be more selective about who we're recommending those products to. Again, the Pixel 3a was so enlightening for me last year. That $400 phone feels like every other $700 plus device that came out alongside of it. And you look at camera performance on that Pixel 3a versus my iPhone XS, and the XS is regularly shamed for having been $1,000 phone, more than twice the retail price of the Pixel 3a. That camera does not perform anywhere near twice as good as the Pixel 3a, and in fact performs poorer in a lot of situations. Some good conversations back and forth between Aditya and Abraham and Baseball Super Otaku 2X. Gary the Fireman, given the debacle of the Note 7 and how quickly Sammy recovered financially, are these sales figures as big an issue? And I would caution, again, I am not qualified to give out stock advice, investment advice. I don't think Samsung is going to be roughed up too bad, but yes, it is functionally a concern. The pivot for consumers moving to the Galaxy A series does not make up for the profit margins on the Galaxy S series. So if you remember back when we were in pre-order, the Galaxy S10 was pre-ordering fairly well. The Galaxy S10 against the Galaxy S9. There was still, from the pre-order to that first month of sales, there was still a dip, but it was healthier than we were expecting. And this was also on the back of Samsung doing a triple launch, which we hadn't seen exactly that same kind of launch strategy with the Galaxy S9. But once we got through that initial sales, the pre-order sales, Samsung profits dipped in Q2 by almost 50%. Someone please check my math on that if you're faster with the Google than I am while I'm hosting a podcast. And one of the major contributing factors that Samsung listed for that profit dip was weak performance on the Galaxy S10 after pre-order. The Galaxy S20 seems like it's in line to do about 2/3 the sales performance of the Galaxy S10. It would be my prediction that facing component shortages, disruptions in the distribution of components because of the coronavirus, and actually this flu season was bad. So that's also a contributing factor in some of this early sales data for 2020. A weak Galaxy S20 and disrupted component shipping sales and revenue, I would imagine that Samsung's financials in Q2 will also be similarly weak and under expectations from where we were at this time period in 2018. So a 2-year, year-over-year losses and a continued sales disruption for the most expensive, highest profit margin devices that Samsung carries. That would be my prediction. I would seriously caution against using any of that information or what I just disclosed as investment advice. That would be a bad idea to play with your money like that. From Tech Girl 90. I traveled back to 2014 when you took that battery out. It's magic. I love it so much. I miss removable batteries so hard. LFA reviews. This has been a great conversation, Some Gadget Guy. Well, of course, because we have a great live chat in here to have a great conversation with. Vazikos 8. I can still remember the awesome commercial with Ultra Battery Saver that lasts a week and then you change the battery. So good. Adichie Anil. Hashtag some optimistically anxious guy. Frat Produce. The fact that the LG includes the second screen case in the base price is huge, in my opinion. Now, here's the concern. If LG's display manufacturing was disrupted for the V60, that could be really bad for one of the key selling features of the V60, or what might lead to a disrupted add-on. So you get the phone, maybe they dedicate all of the display manufacturing to getting the phones out, and then you have to wait to get the second screen. We're going to be days into seeing what the potential disruption might be, and then it might be weeks before that disruption is sort of evened out in the market with the manufacturing. The Sentinel 909, what do you think, Juan? Should I wait for the Pixel 4a or get a 3a now from my lady? If your lady can hold off until we get an announcement, I would try to wait. If you're picking up a phone today, I still think the Pixel 3a is a screamer performer. I have some concerns that Google will be able to keep up with all of their Pixel lines on day one Android releases, but I was very encouraged by Android 10 arriving on every Pixel on day one. So I'm still feeling very confident for the Pixel 3a as a medium-term solution. I think another 2 years with the Pixel 3a as a general communicator, daily driver. You like to take snapshotty photos with good HDR support. I can't see anything that's really going to knock that phone out of contention 2 years from now. The only thing being, you just have to be a little bit more aggressive with your storage strategy because of the limited, only 64 gig of storage. So just help her with some backups so that stuff is saved and you can kind of clear it from the phone storage. And the Pixel 3a is still a decent performer. If she can wait, waiting is better. But if you need to pull the trigger on a phone, 3a is still solid. All right. Sorry, I'm just reading through some of these comments here. There's a lot of chatter happening. You guys are awesome, guys and gals, and tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions. I love you all so much. This is amazing. Okay, but it's 11:07 now. We've gone a little bit over 2 hours. I think it's time that we wrap this up. Folks, I still don't know exactly what my video strategy is going to be. I still have some cleaning to do in the Gadget Lab. Like, if you kind of, if I turn that over there, you can see my main table where I host content is still absolutely trashed, and I need to clean and clean and clean some more. But the Gadget Lab is shaping up. It's looking really good. I'm very happy with this more open layout, and I think it's going to be very helpful. But I've got follow-up videos to do on a bunch of headphones. I'm playing with the Nubia, so a dual screen Nubia phone that I got to get back to the YouTube tech guy. I got to get that back to Ricky. And we're running right into all of the new phone releases and announcements. So stuff's coming. I just don't know exactly what's going to be coming next. But I do know that for my next video for hashtag 2020 hearing, I want to talk about just some basic biology. So I've got a video written talking about how your ears work. And I've got some cute little interstitials to cut in from those old educational films that you can get from archive.org. Like, you'd sit in a science class in the 1950s and they'd play one of these film reels and they're terrible, but the information's still pretty good. So I'm going to be cutting that up in there too. Love your ears, protect your ears, and get a better listening experience, because we don't always treat our ears with the same consideration that we treat our eyes. So folks, thank you so much for the participation, for the chatter. And not just from my videos, not just from my live streams and podcasts. I gotta say, 2020 has been so exciting. It's such a fresh start. And again, without getting too choked up or too emotional, so many of my friends over last year had rough years from 2018 through 2019. There was this general existential crisis that we were all going through. And it's through the engagement and the participation of communities like this, those of you who are game to watch me ramble on in a podcast like this, where a number of us are coming out the other side. We're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We're making adjustments. We're making the content that we've always wanted to make. We're not feeling as constrained or as hamstrung by, chasing our metrics or doing what Google says you should do on YouTube. Seeing channels like TK's, like Joshua Vergara's, like LFA Reviews, Easy Computer Solutions, the Gadgets Chat podcast, Tech Love and Mama, all of these people who are joining this conversation, joining it in earnest, and that this community has not only welcomed them, like allowed them to be there, but is celebrating a diversity of different viewpoints and commentary and discussions. Viper's channel, if you want the professional wrestling version of a tech channel, why aren't you following Viper? RIP headphone users, but the dude is awesome. To be a part of that is so much more fulfilling and is so much more replenishing emotionally than that race that I was in to try and build my metrics and boost my channel and signing on to Pocket Now and being a part of an umbrella team. This feels real. And 2020 is kicked off in a way where, while our industry faces significant challenges and the politics around our industry have never been more divisive, the conversations and the support from this community has never been more thoughtful or more caring. And that means something to those of us on this side of the camera. And I hope, words are insufficient, but I hope you can get the sense of how much it means to me that you're all along for this ride. So folks, I want you to have an amazing week with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I will catch you back here next week for another Monday morning tech chat on the SGGQA podcast channel. Take care. Be well. I love you all. I'll catch you back.